Hey guys, welcome back to the Secret Code Podcast. Today we have Carter Woetzel back on the show because we're finally ready to go live with Shade. Airdrop's coming in just 4 days. Stay tuned, get involved, ask some questions. We've got some of his awesome books to give away. Also, you might get lucky and get a Secret Code Podcast koozie. Why not? Throw some stuff in it. But yeah, stay tuned. This is going to be a fun one.
For the community, by the community.
Carter, welcome back to the show, dude. How you been, man?
Doing great. It's a little cold out here in Minnesota, but spring is on the horizon. And honestly, my favorite time zone in the world of crypto is spring, right? It starts to get warm again. Projects start launching. You can go outside, enjoy the nice weather, jump back inside, hop on Twitter, and enjoy all the fun. So it's a good time. It's a good time.
I totally understand. I'm here in Southern California. It got under 60 degrees, and it's awful. Just completely suffering out here. But dude, it's been a minute. We had you on the show. You've launched the Shade Reveal here on our podcast, which was awesome. Since then, you're on CryptoCito and terabytes and everything. And meanwhile, we've been growing here too. But it's great to have you back. It's so awesome to see like what was initially just kind of like a concept get developed and built out. Love the awesome advertising. The graphics are great, and conceptually, it's come a really long way too. And it's finally almost here. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, and thanks for having me back on the show. I looked back on that video that we obviously recorded together, and it was like, wow, we have come a long ways since then, and that was only a couple months ago. So it's great to be back. I consider the Secret Code Podcast the home for all things Secret Network. So love the work your team does, and it's great that you continue to put such amazing content in front of the secret community. So.
Thank you, man. We're trying. I was stoked today. The Dreamscape team airdropped me some of my logo playing card NFTs. So I'm like, yeah, it's coming along. I remember hitting up Ethan's wife, asking her to build out my logo, or our logo, and it's we love it. But for those of the audience who are joining, because obviously our podcast is growing, you're growing, the Secret Network's growing. Not everyone's been here for the last 6-7 months or so. Introduce yourself. Who is Carter Woetzel? What is Shade?
Yeah, so name's Carter Woetzel. I've been in the crypto space since really late 2017. I had a cousin introduce me to blockchain. He sent me a bunch of messages on LinkedIn. I'm like, what's this cryptocurrency stuff? Started taking a bunch of notes. I ended up having like 20 to 30 pages worth of notes on a Google Doc. And I was like, wait a second, like I think I'm writing a book right now. It's okay. So I then spent the next 3 years from 2017 to 2020 just deep diving cryptocurrency and blockchain. All the literature that I read about it was either way too tech focused or way too investment focused. So I wanted to write something that kind of straddled the middle ground. And it was during those 3 years that I found like this very obvious problem, which is where is the privacy in blockchain? We have totally transparent blockchains that are permanently immutable. Like where are the data access controls? How are we going to truly build Web3 if there's no privacy involved? And that's where eventually found Enigma, which was a layer 2 privacy solution on Ethereum, which eventually became Secret Network, a layer 1. Found the community there, got involved, started contributing, ended up working for the Secret Foundation. Awesome entity that's here to grow this massive privacy-focused community. Also met some other key people like Mohammed Petla, and we spun up Secure Secrets, which is a validator on multiple different Cosmos networks, and we also started developing Shade Protocol. And the vision of Shade Protocol is super simple. We want to build an array of connected privacy-preserving applications, and the first one we're building is Silk, a privacy-preserving stablecoin. So many, like we're seeing a huge amount of growth in the world of stablecoins, but they're totally transparent. And how are we supposed to bridge this world of Web3 back to everyday merchants and everyday transactions if, like in a situation where if I went up to a vendor and made a purchase with a stablecoin, they would know my entire transaction history since the beginning of time. They would know my entire bank balance. Like you have to, privacy is a requirement to truly bringing stablecoins into everyday life. And so that's our vision: build Silk, build this phenomenal futuristic stablecoin, and build all sorts of other key financial primitives with it. So yeah, it's a little bit about the vision.
Come on, Carter. I mean, this is distributed ledger technology. Your whole idea is everybody's supposed to have access to all your receipts. No, you're 100% right. I mean, the technology Bitcoin created, it solves a huge problem, sending money anywhere in the world within minutes really cheaply. Ethereum solves another big problem of automating contracts and whatnot, which is fantastic, but you don't want everybody to see every contract that ever takes place, and you don't want everyone to know everything you ever spend money on. And so you definitely found an important niche that needed to be addressed, and I think you guys have built out a wonderful product that is addressing this and more needs. So very quickly, you guys are going to be launching this token with a full airdrop to Secret, Luna, and Atom stakers, any of these three ecosystems, in just 4 days on February 21st.
Yeah, February 21st. It's multi-chain airdrops are no easy task. Specifically, the most difficult part was making sure that we could airdrop people in the Terra community, just because there are chains that are very Kepler friendly and Terra is not one of them. So a lot of like key derivation stuff and address verification was like incredibly complicated. It was more than we originally anticipated. But after lots of hard work, the dev team got it to work, and it's going to be a multi-chain airdrop that includes Terra. And all, if you staked from November 7th to December 13th, then you qualify for the airdrop. So.
Wonderful. I did. I'm getting an airdrop, and I'm stoked about it. And you guys really are pioneers in the idea of Cosmos multi-chain airdrops, which are now starting to be more popularized. And I'm seeing a lot of these other groups leave Secret out. It's like, we started this. This is our boy. This is our team. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, multi-chain airdrops. I hope we continue to see more and more of it, and I hope that Secret Network is included in a lot of it. It's just like such a unique opportunity to pull in new communities and give them a reason to come check out your ethos, check out the product. And it's really like discovery, right? Mm-hmm. For people in Terra, if they've never been airdropped from Secret Network, and now there's this chance that they would cross a bridge and go check out what this whole ecosystem is, and Shade might be the first time that they make that jump. So I view airdrops, multi-chain airdrops, as a huge opportunity for Secret Network as a layer one. Like it's pulling new users here, new energy, and there's no telling how far that will take us. So awesome. I hope we have lots of airdrops from Secret Network in the future. So
me too. So we had you on the show a couple months ago. You showed us a nice slideshow explaining what Shade was going to be as you guys were building everything out and what problems it addressed. You went through really the history of stablecoins, going from Tether to DAI to Lunaterra and to what Shade and Silk are going to offer. And it really is brilliant and fascinating. You guys do check that out. And we really appreciate you and the huge and fantastic community you guys have built for sharing that video out. We've got over like 2,000 views on it. Like, it's definitely by far been our best performing video because you guys have such a large and passionate community. But some more things we'd like to discuss in this episode are like some of the new technologies and new things coming out with Shade and Silk. And one is that its peg is going to be a little bit different than what we've seen in a lot of other stablecoins. Can you walk me through what the peg for Silk is going to be, this first application in stablecoin?
For sure. So when we first sat down and thought about designing a stablecoin, the obvious first step is you research all of the existing stablecoins, from every single component, from branding to like the UI UX experience, and perhaps most importantly is like how the system maintains its peg and what it's pegged to. And one thing we've identified in DeFi is all of these stablecoins to date have been extremely focused on being pegged to the US dollar. If you look at historical data of the US dollar's dominance, it has dropped from around 80% all the way down to low 30s, and that number is going to continue to drop. And so when you do that deep dive research, a philosophical question emerges. Should the future of DeFi be stablecoins that are pegged to the US dollar, right? And in the present moment, this generation of people that first jumped on a blockchain, like we think in terms of the dollar, like that's so much of what our world is. But the world of Web3 is much, much bigger than the US dollar. It's much, much bigger than the euro or the yen. And so then we challenged ourselves. Can we make a stable coin that instead of being pegged to a sovereign currency, could we instead peg it to a basket of global currencies and commodities in a way that makes it essentially agnostic from any given sovereign country, and also ultimately reducing volatility from being attached to any given sovereign currency. If you're just pegged to the dollar, then the dollar's economic activity, all the different financial institutions behind it, as a holder, you are subject to those centralized risks. You have no control over the reserve system, right? So, and even with like inflation with the US dollar right now, we're seeing, I think the number I read that within the next decade, if you had like $100,000 sitting in your bank account, the purchasing power will drop to around $50,000 worth in the next 9 years. Like, that is insane. So you might be happy that you're holding something stable on the blockchain, but its purchasing power is being eroded away because it's ultimately pegged to this larger centralized ecosystem, right? So Silk, pegged to a basket of global currencies and commodities, it has this privacy, specifically auditable privacy, courtesy of Secret Network and the amazing tech stack. And it also has a path to interoperability across Web 2 and Web 3. So it's beautifully positioned. The community has been hard at work. I think there's a group of around 10 to 15 people that have all come up with alternative models for what the basket could consist of. And we are narrowing in as we get closer and closer to the launch of Silk, which is separate from the launch of Shade, of finalizing the weights attached to the different currencies and commodities. To my knowledge, though, gold will 100% will be included. Bitcoin will also be included, which is really cool. And then it'll be a bunch of other sovereign currencies, and those weights are based off of back testing and how the Silk peg will perform with certain weights. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, you're spot on with the idea of the US dollars having some issues. I mean, they just reported 7.5% inflation, which is likely higher than, which I wouldn't mind if they let me run a validator, but they don't. So inflation's realistically more accurate reports suggest it's more like 12%. And either way, it's ridiculously high. The housing market's shooting up, but realistically, the purchasing power correlation with the housing market's exactly the same. Just the dollar's just going down really fast. And having everything pegged to the dollar is scary. And this does offer a new and novel solution, but that does also come with new difficulties. So some of the inspiration for Shade and Silk has come from the way Terra and Luna burns itself to change the supply to negotiate the price. With supply and demand, as demand increases, they have to increase the supply, such and such, to keep the peg at $1. How are we going to do that if the price of Silk is subject to change? And how can we make that more transparent? So the arbitrage bots and everything you guys have set up, which is brilliant, know what to do.
Totally. I mean, essentially, the target peg is something that's going to be slowly shifting over time, something that's publicly queryable by everyone. So if Silk's target peg rate changes by 0.00001, everyone that's arbing it will be, aware of this very slow shift. And the goal for Silk's peg is to move extremely slow. It should be glacial in that sense. Like, Silk's peg should only change, like, at most, if we're talking dollar terms, like 1 or 2 cents. Like pennies at the most over the course of like multiple years. So the shift should be very, very, very slow. Everyone's able to query the peg as it continues to shift. And then so the arbitrage bands just essentially wrap around and evolve as Silk's peg also migrates. So probably just means that the arbitrage community will have to put in a little bit more work to be able to just check that their trades are in fact profitable in relation to Silk's peg migrating a minuscule amount over the course of time. But separate from that, like Terra and UST's burning mechanism back and forth to maintain the peg, the algorithmic stability, absolutely stands true. UST's got over 10 billion in circulation. They've done a great job of bootstrapping that whole ecosystem. And we looked at the algorithmic peg and said, hey, let's grab that. Let's add on some innovation with the privacy component, with the decentralized basket component. And then we also add in one additional stability mechanism, which is Shade staking collateral, as well as collateral from the Shade treasury, get deposited into an arbitrage contract that also help maintain the peg. So Terra Luna UST's peg is maintained by institutional and retail arbitrage players. Shade protocol with Silk, Silk's peg is maintained by retail, institutional, staking collateral, as well as treasury collateral. So we added on additional stability into Silk's peg too. Because one of the things we said is if we stripped privacy from Silk, would it still stand up to the other stablecoins? Would it still be innovative? And the answer is resoundingly yes.
This is exactly what I love to see. I've echoed it quite a few times here. I'm so tired of people being like, oh, well, that was built out. Let's do that with privacy. Oh, well, that was built out. Let's do that with privacy, and just copying the same ideas. We can build new stuff. We can have our own ingenuity and innovation, and also make it much more long-term sustainable because we have privacy with it. We don't have to have new ideas built first on Solana or Ethereum and then rebuild it over here. Like, we can build new stuff here that could also be recreated somewhere else without privacy, but who's going to go make it worse? So I absolutely love the vision. You guys we're getting lots of comments in here as well about people loving the vision. It really is fantastic. The idea of a stable coin that's also safe, because if the US dollar fails, Shade and Silk won't. That's good to see.
100%. And I totally agree with you, because it would be, and you're a builder too, Eric, you know, in this ecosystem, we have so many builders in our ecosystem, and it would be so easy for us to just settle and be like, here's a great product, we add on privacy and that's it. But we have an opportunity to not just leapfrog by adding on privacy, but to create a whole new generation of applications with privacy as well as innovation on top of existing transparent systems in DeFi and Web3. So
we're getting a request for an Eli 5. How does Shade work?
Explain it to me like I'm 5. All right. So let's say Silk is targeting $1.05 for the peg. All right. And let's say on the market, the Silk is trading at $1.07. This isn't good because we want it at the $1.05 mark, but it's trading at $1.07. So what we do is we allow anyone in the world to burn $1 worth of shade for one Silk that the market is valuing at $1.07, right? So you have this conversion minting opportunity. You've expanded the supply for the entire system, and this ultimately pushes the price back to its target peg of $1.05. The inverse arbitrage is also an opportunity that's given. So the beauty of algorithmic pegs is there's these arbitrage opportunities always available for everyone, small or big, to either interact with the supply in a way that shrinks the supply or expands the supply in a way that pushes the entire system back to its target peg. So I know that wasn't like a 5-year-old explanation. I'm trying to think, like, how else would I explain it at a 5-year-old level? Eric, what's your 5-year-old description of algorithmic stablecoins?
I'm just laughing. We have a new user here named Jeremy Shipper who's asking you to explain it like you're 2.
Stay tuned, you're 2.
Love you, Jeremy. I think that's a good explanation.
You have a glass of water. You want it to be at a certain height, and anyone can come along and like bump it to either pour water out or add water in to keep it at the target price. And whenever they do this process of adding water or removing water, we pay you money to do that. Yay.
And the reason it's not pegged directly to $1 is because it's a sippy cup and it can't fully spill. All right. Thank you for indulging us with that. Another new novel thing I'd love to talk about for Shade Silk that I want to know more about is your guys' governance adaptation. So everything going on with DAOs, it's the idea of the people govern is so much more efficient than stock. You don't have to have so much of it and get elected to the board to sit in a room with a bunch of other people in business suits and make decisions on behalf of everyone who's not there representing. We have on-chain governance where you can provably have effect, and it, unlike the U.S. governance system, is provably accurate with an exact representation of your ownership and your ability to vote. So what can the Shade token govern, and how is the governance process going to look?
It's a great question. I'm a firm believer that governance is the final frontier of all protocols. The example I like to give is there are countries in the world that failed to scale because their governance failed to scale, believe it or not. And so when we talk about governance within the context of, treasuries that are growing and shareholders that are growing in value, you can't just like casually shrug it off and be like, oh, like we'll deal with that 3-4 years from now. It's like you need to have an intentional macro vision for governance that is flexible enough to grow as your community grows, right? So here's a concept we're introducing in the Shade protocol. So we have something called the Shade DAO, which is simply put, it's a treasury. It's a treasury of collateral. And this treasury grows from issuance of bonds. It accrues value from transaction fees, from swap fees, from all the different primitives that get built out. The treasury is going to be growing and growing and growing. All of these uncorrelated assets on its balance sheet. Now, the question then becomes, how do you govern it? And how do you govern all the primitives that we're building, right? And so we came up with this concept of branches. And what a branch is that it's a multi-sig that all of the baseline token holders can vote on. They can vote for what addresses are going to be a part of the multi-sig. And then this multi-sig specifically only has access to certain parameters and certain actions as it pertains to this entire DAO. And so in this way, we can have 5, 6, 7, 8 branches, each one doing something specifically unique that baseline token holders had voted on and said, this is like what type of functionality we're going to give to those people. Now, there's still an additional problem with branches. The thing is, if you have a multi-sig that can govern certain parameters and take certain actions, how are they ultimately accountable to underlying token holders? And so we've added in this concept of something called sanity checks. An example of this would be if the treasury wants to liquidity provide. No, a sanity check. That's what they call it.
If the president's too old.
One could draw a conclusion like that. But like, let's say the multi-sig is about to liquidity provide, some amount of secret and some amount of shade to a DEX somewhere, right? And so the branch that's devoted to that component of treasury management says, hey, we want to take this action. There's then something called a sanity check, where baseline token holders get to vote yes or no on that, but it has an extremely low quorum. Okay, so the idea behind this is we've elected these people to these branches. The branches have scoped functionality. We want to give them the flexibility to grow the treasury and modify primitives for optimal growth, but there still needs to be a way to have a sanity check on their every given action. So we trust them, but we don't trust them that much, right? So that's these types of checks and balances that we're trying to mirror from the real world. So that's concept number 1, branches and sanity checks. Another really big concept we're adding in is something called representatives. And all that representatives is users that stake their shade have the ability to bond their vote to another address. Now, we're taking a unique stance on this. There's no economic benefit. This is completely a public good. Anyone can be a representative because anyone with an address can receive like a vote from a shade staker that's attaching their vote to them. So what we're hoping to see emerge is representatives that are literally serving the public good, that are able to vote on behalf of shade stakers. And the shade staker gave them the vote because they trust them. And you can always vote separately as a voter. But if you want to be able to disappear for a year, you can hand your vote off to someone else that you trust. No one's really done this concept before, like these pure representatives without economic gain. We're not sure how it's going to play out. The whole system would work even if there wasn't representatives, but we view representatives as like a public good that adds to the efficiency of the larger system. So those are kind of the basic concepts of shade governance that we're really excited to build out in the future.
You just threw out so much novel stuff in about 5 minutes of talking about governance, and I love it so much. The differences between layer 1 governance ability and layer 2 is substantial. And this is something that people are genuinely struggling with. I mean, right now I represent Secret Swap and CeFi a lot, and we have private on-chain governance, which is dope, but it doesn't show clear parameters of what is governable. We get propositions put up all the time, like, hey, list on Coinbase. It's like, that's not something we have control over. You can't just, if it passes, we're like, poof, we're on Coinbase, the vote said so. Man, so enumerating parameters and having specific representatives for those parameters is fantastic. But then you're also taking what Secret and most Cosmos layer 1s do, which is delegated proof of stake, and you're allowing, so right now, listeners, if you're unfamiliar, right now when you delegate your secret to a validator, like the Secure Secrets validator or the Secret Code podcast node, if you do not vote on individual proposals, your vote will default set to whatever we vote as. So you can always vote individually, which is fine, and we do request you guys do that. But if you don't, if you're not like, I'm not going to go every single week, like I'm not going to go vote on the education committee or the support committee individually, I'm sure it'll pass, I'm not going to worry about it. You're relying on your node to go and vote for it. And a lot of people don't want to have to be active and spend gas and do this every single week and whatnot. But there are people that are involved enough, like us node operators, that do. And so the fact that you can, with a layer 2, these people aren't making money off you, but the people who are going to actively vote, who you do trust, who your friend who got you into this protocol, who's way more into DeFi than you are or whatnot, you can literally let them vote for you and you don't have to worry about it. And that's really cool. That's, as far as I know, I'm sure that's never been done as a layer 2. So that's really neat.
I think layer ones, it's like it's a really tough situation to be in because we've essentially delegated the responsibility of governance to people that are securing the system. And who's to say that people that are securing the system are the best position to govern it?
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think that's the case, but that's what delegated proof of stake is. Like fundamentally, that is the architecture of it. And so the advantage of being a layer two building governance is we don't have any fork in monetary incentive for like the representative equivalent. We're saying it's a public good. There is no economic like revenue stream going to those individuals. It's purely like up to people to delegate or not. It's purely like a convenience thing. Now, the Shade DAO, there could be a branch devoted to representatives. Maybe one day you could have the DAO financially, support some of these representatives, but that is completely and entirely up to the token holders to create that branch, to have a budget pulled aside for that, and to have the representatives benefit from it. So it's very much of the people, by the people, for the people. And we're not going to put that type of economic incentive in place unless governance decides this is what we want. We're not going to make that assumption. Someone said, can representatives vote to representatives? I love the fact that my brain's never asked myself that question before, and someone out there, that was one of their first questions. At the end of the day, a representative is just an address that received someone else's vote. So I see no reason why a representative couldn't vote to another representative unless we're worried about centralization over time. And like I said, this is why governance is the ultimate end game for any protocol that's going to have a significantly sized treasury community. I can't answer all the questions about governance, but what we do need to do is design a system that can answer the questions over time via the community, via that decentralized system. So designing it for flexibility, don't make assumptions about what your baseline token holders want, and make sure that in any system where we're trying to give a multi-sig, aka a branch, flexibility to do good things for the DAO, which they're incentivized to do, to make sure there's still sanity checks and responsibility that's held by the underlying token holders. So
Awesome. Ethan and I are bad actors, so you have to make sure it's prepared for bad actors. I'm going to delegate my vote to him. He's going to delegate his vote to me, and we're both going to vote the opposite on every single proposal and just see what happens.
The Spider-Man.
We have another really good question here from It Will Do One. Are you not worried about the influencers, or representatives in this case, having easy access to push their agenda on your ecosystem? What if Mr. Beast on his next YouTube video tells everybody to buy Shade and vote to give him a bunch of Shade?
Yeah. Well, I think the beauty of Shade Protocol is that everyone who is a Shade token holder is incentivized to essentially like maximize revenue and impact like Shade, its primitives, and Silk, and all the different on the world of Web3. So everyone's united under the same token. The biggest fork in incentives comes the instant the Shade DAO and the Shade Treasury starts paying money to people.
Yep.
Right. That is the instant you see the fork in people and like that friction. So there is no like long-term answer to that, because I'm a firm believer that within a world of like a massive multi-billion-dollar treasury that's trying to scale different components of the DAO, you're gonna need experts, right? Which means those people are gonna need to be incentivized, which means there's decisions by governance to reward monetary funds to people. And so inevitably, there's going to be that type of friction in the long run. And there's no answer to that. Like, you need people to scale these massive ecosystems and these massive systems. And it's a little messy. It's a little nuanced. Like I said, that's why we're focused on giving the tools to the people. We'll see how they navigate it. But to answer the question of, are you worried about someone like pushing their agenda? Our agenda is Shade and Silk. And I don't know what the other divergence of that could be, unless I suppose like some sort of attack, and maybe some nation state trying to mess with Silk's peg. There are some attack vectors that could emerge, and like I said, don't have all the answers now. We're just designing the system to be as resilient as possible. So,
100%. No, excellent content, good things to plan and be ready for. Want to get into the airdrop a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So we have the essentially 14.5% of supply plus the other three. There's essentially 17.5% going out on day one. We're estimating that only 15% of people should claim the airdrop, and it's only 20% of the airdrops going out initially. The other 80% is going out to people once Silk goes live, once the Treasury goes live, and once Shade Staking goes live. So we're splitting the airdrop up into two components, 20% now, 80% later. There's a reason for you to come back and actually use the protocol. Right now with this, right now in this current airdrop, it's purely speculative. Shade has no utility in the current situation outside of liquidity providing and speculation, and I want to be completely transparent about that. The functionality of staking, Silk going online, staking derivatives, and any other primitives on the way, all of that's coming in the following months. We still need to go through our primary audits for those different components of it. But yeah, we're super excited to get the initial 20% out, get it into the hands of the community, and have people have some ownership and be excited about what's coming. So I think you've pulled up here the airdrop calculator page if you want to run us through that.
Yeah, so I've already done this for my address. Obviously, I'm using the tutorial address here, which somehow isn't going to earn any shade. But if you go to airdrop.shadeprotocol.io, you can find out exactly how much you qualify for if you've been staking Atom, Luna, and Secret. If you have multiple addresses staking, add all your addresses. I'm just going to use one here. And you could open your Kepler, copy and paste that address in. Choose one, it'll calculate your airdrop for you. I'm earning 0 from the one secret I've had staked for not even the part that had the airdrop, so that makes sense. But my actual airdrop, I am getting some shade, and I'm super excited about it. Now, you said we're going to be able to claim 20% of the amount that will show up here initially. How are we going to be able to get the rest of it?
So the other 80% will be once we launch, there's going to be tasks for users to perform. One of them would be, hey, convert a certain amount of your shade into Silk. There could be something like stake your shade, unlock the rest, vote on a governance proposal, unlock the rest. So there's going to be very clear tasks that get users actually using the protocol, interacting with it, and that's how the rest of the airdrop will be unlocked. So great question.
Awesome. One more thing came to mind about the governance stuff that you were talking about is you mentioned that it would be a significant fork once or if when people decide to start voting themselves into the treasury. There's an old famous quote, I forget who by, so I guess not famous enough. But the idea that once a democracy votes themselves into a treasury, it's doomed to fail. And we've seen a lot of that happen with modern governance to this day. But this also is different in that it's not, well, it is an active democracy. It's not necessarily set up to fail the same way. So there are completely novel intricacies at play where you can vote yourself into the treasury, but that's also going to lower the utility of the treasury and of the platform you're holding. So like say the treasury's up to, I don't know, $10 million or whatnot. If people decide to disperse the entire treasury to the people, then sure, they get that money right away, but now their shade's worth a lot less because it doesn't own that treasury.
Right.
It's really a lot of interesting game theory at play that's novel. I urge people, at least for these next couple of years, in my opinion, long term, to please follow Secure Secret's leadership. Follow Carter. They know what they're doing. This is their idea. It's brilliant, and they're good people. They are not greedy.
The goal is definitely like I've always viewed the core development team as like a transient entity. Like if we don't exist in 2-3 years and like it's just in the hands of the community to run all these primitives and these things, and like we will have succeeded wildly beyond our dreams, right? But I definitely appreciate the compliment. And the good news is that we're seeing leadership emerge within the Shade community from the community itself. People that just from all over the world that are doing peg research, they're hosting podcasts, they're interfacing on Twitter, and like it just brings a lot of joy and confidence knowing that this isn't like a two-person team. This is like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And scaling is going to be difficult. Like you said, like governance within human history is unbelievably difficult. And so I'm hoping that over time, someone like me can think less and less about building primitives and building products, and I can be more and more focused on governance and contributing on that side of things. Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned last time you were on the show that if in several years, I might even say less than that, that you cannot use Silk to pay with things with a debit or credit card, that you will have failed. Will the fact that it's pegged to something other than a dollar make that more difficult to use?
I think we're in a shifting political climate right now where the idea of digital cryptocurrencies that are not attached to sovereign entities are becoming more and more accepted. Like Bitcoin specifically, we're seeing more and more countries be like, we're going to accept this as legal tender. We're going to accept this as a currency. We're going to accept this as something that interfaces with our legacy financial institutions. So assuming that Bitcoin as a store of value and also as a currency becomes accepted, I see no reason why a potentially superior product in relation to certain use cases and certain utility wouldn't also be accepted on the global playing field. There's obviously massive uphill and upwind battles that have to happen. I think sovereign currencies are going to have a bigger problem with these derivative stable coins that, like, if you picture the dollar as like a layer 1 and derivative dollar stable coins like UST as a layer 2, the bigger that layer 2 gets, the more that if that breaks, the layer 1s like could actually be dramatically impacted. Versus Silk, it's not claiming to be a derivative of like one sovereign currency or one system. It lives within this whole system of economies and currencies. And so there's going to be additional legal risk potentially from that, but I also think there's advantages from a legal standpoint too. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Whenever I'm explaining impermanent loss to people, which we'll probably make a tutorial about that pretty soon, but whenever I'm explaining how it works and what to do about it, and just like I always say, like, hey, just liquidity provide with 2 assets you believe in, and you'll take the losing side of every trade, but you'll win in the long run. People ask me, oh, so you only liquidity provide assets you believe in? I'm like, well, not exactly, because I liquidity provide in USDC. And it's not that the coin's not great, it's that the underlying dollar I have issues with. Yeah, you're 100% right. I do think there will be some transition of global reserve currencies eventually. And it seems to me like Silk's what the digital dollar was supposed to be. We have Gary Gensler's comments in late 2019, late 2020, talking about how we need stable coins to have privacy attached to them. And this does that and more. Now, with the airdrop being into Secret, Atom, and Luna stakers, what are your plans for IBC integration? Obviously, it's built on Secret Network, but we have bridges and there's more that can be done. But I mean, I know you're a big picture guy. What more can we expect for all of Cosmos?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first big step is we need an upgrade from CosmWasm 0.1 to CosmWasm 1, which essentially would make SNP20's IBC compatible. And I know lots of application layer projects on Secret Network are like super pumped for that day. There's going to be some technical challenges too, like potentially migrating SNP20s, which is interesting, but it's worth it, right? Like at the end of the day, making sure SNP20s are IBC compatible unlocks a huge percentage of functionality. I think the place I'm most excited to have Silk go to specifically is probably Osmosis. Like there's just so many users there, so many eyes on Osmosis. So to be able to introduce a new stablecoin to the larger Cosmos is like just super pumped for that day to come. Can't happen until we have that first IBC upgrade. I know Substrate and a couple of Polkadot projects are also in the process of integrating into IBC and potentially Secret Network. So those are other places we want Silk to go to as well. So I think step 1 is just get Silk here, get it in circulation, get Silk launched, and then once we're IBC compatible, it's getting Silk to as many Cosmos chains as humanly possible. So
cool. So we talked about Silk being the first application and it being the stablecoin native that will have that balance and peg with Shade. But what are some of the other applications you guys plan on building? I heard some talks about potentially other assets and whatnot.
Yeah, so the big ones we already have built / process of getting audited are there's the Secret staking derivative product, and there'll also be a Shade staking derivative product. Those are both really cool primitives that just like the community collectively, I think, are looking forward to being able to unlock the value of stake collateral. I think the DEXs are going to appreciate having these staking derivative products. So staking derivatives are a really big one. There's also a pool together staking one that's being built out that should be generalizable for any SNP20 staking scenario. So that's more of like a side utility. I wouldn't really call it a primitive. And then on top of that, it's like I think we're looking to see where the demand is from users, like primitive wise, like whether it could be a DEX, it could be a lend product, it could be insurance products. I think it's just kind of like up to our user base to kind of point us the direction in terms of where is the next big thing. And obviously synthetic assets We could talk about synthetic assets and bonds literally forever. I think you've probably heard me talk about it on like Crypto Cedo podcast at this point, but those are my two other favorite primitives. Bonds for sure are coming to Shade Protocol, as are synthetic assets, as are the staking derivatives. Everything else is still somewhat unknown and up to the community of builders to head towards.
Love to see it. And for example, listeners, if synthetic assets is a new term to you, the idea would be like representative Tesla stock or representative gold, which you could then trade digitally and privately. That is completely pegged to the accurate price through their versions of White Whale, which are built directly into Shade. So that's really, really fascinating stuff. I know I personally own a little bit of gold and silver just to diversify in case everything crashes. But I would never buy gold or silver where they only give me a certificate. We've seen and more evidence is coming out. So many instances of them overprinting certificates, and then when you try to return your certificate and get the physical gold or silver, they're like, "Oh well, we're out of stock. Give us 6 months." And it's like, "What do you mean you're out of stock? Like this proves that I own so much that you have. How can that be?" But if you have the digital representation that's provably accurate and authentic on chain, where anyone can audit the code, you'll love to see it, man. That's
the other
so much
the other
better.
one I'm super excited about with synthetics is like, we could launch a token that is pegged to all the different privacy tokens out there, and the weight of that contributes towards the peg is based off of like the market cap of those privacy projects. So you could have something that's literally a privacy coin that is an index token that represents all the different privacy coins that are out there. You could do the same thing you could have a synthetic S&P 500, but like the crypto version of it. We look at the top 200 projects, and based off of the market cap contribution, that's how the peg is ultimately decided. And then like, I think that's a product that people would want to use, because I know if I could buy something that's either like a hedge of a specific asset class type within crypto or is representative of the entire asset class itself, those are really powerful and interesting products that are really, really interesting. And then imagine that you pull in institutional investors into the game where they can privately on-chain purchase a cryptocurrency synthetic index token. That's like, it seems like demand there for that. So.
This is bringing the comments on. R is calling it a hypothecation. Yes, and it's absolutely what will bring in large institutional investors. And if large institutional investors get interested in stuff like this, you know that they're going to be getting Shade to make sure it's governed properly, and you love to see it. Could you talk a little bit about the inflation of Shade and how that works, in case somebody's missed out on the novelty of that and what it's going to mean for Secret Network, for IBC, and all the tokens that are accepted?
It's a really good question. So Shade is essentially, every time Silk is minted, there has to be Shade that's burned to account for that increase in demand and that Silk that was minted, right? So if you have hundreds and hundreds of millions of Silk burned, you're going to have Shade get or hundreds of millions of Silk minted. You will need Shade burned to support that. So essentially, as supply of Shade goes up, supply of Shade should go down, which is traditionally what we would call a deflationary asset. But in contractionary scenarios where there's less demand for Silk, then there is Silk being burned and Shade being minted, right? So contractionary events, it's no longer deflationary. During expansionary events for Silk's tied to Silk's demand, the system does become deflationary. So that's why like Terra is 100% like obsessed with getting UST demanded in as many places as humanly possible, because you're creating that deflationary effect on the entire system, which is super strong for token holders, because you're accruing more and more value because your asset you're holding is becoming more scarce. We do add in another mechanism called entry minting, where users are essentially able to deposit to the treasury something like $100 worth of secret, and in return $100 worth of Shade is like minted, right? So there is this, it's collaterally backed. You could call it an inflationary mechanism, but it's not like printing nothing out. It's not like printing something out of nothing. It's more so like a trade of collateral goes to treasury, Shade is given in return. Bonds follow a similar concept with Olympus DAO. So in summary, inflationary in moments, deflationary in others. But if demand for Silk, the goal is to have the demand for Silk and the deflationary effect that creates outstrip any sort of collateralized inflation movements. We'll see in supply.
But in general, yeah, people have to burn tokens to get in, which will then be deflationary for any of the accepted tokens. Which tokens are going to be accepted for initial entry minting?
So initially, it's going to for sure be secret. The treasury contract is already configured where it will receive the secret, stake the secret, and it will get randomly distributed based off of, the certain validator set rules. So it's not going to be centralized staking. It's going to be decentralized secret staking, but for sure secret. That's the biggest, it's the token of the layer one. And there's all sorts of situations where having the treasury have a good amount of secret for gas and triggering other contracts and other use cases, like definitely an asset we care a lot about. And then besides secret, I think it's going to be other layer one tokens that are stakeable. Like yield bearing assets are super, super important to the health of any given treasury. So I think Atom and Luna are really big ones we'll be focusing on as well. So, and potentially other application tokens on Secret Network that's stakeable. Like CeFi is technically stakeable. So like that could be in the cards for entry minting if people wanted that.
So here's a good question from Felipe. When you're able to trade Silk on other dexes like Osmosis, once we have that full IBC compatibility, will it lose its privacy?
The answer is yes, you lose your privacy. So the underlying infrastructure of Secret Network, all the different nodes all around the world, the specific hardware level encryption and the network that's attached to that hardware level encryption, that is what gives Silk its privacy. So the instant your asset leaves Secret Network as actual tangible hardware, you don't magically keep the privacy. You are now on top of a transparent blockchain, and therefore you're transparent. But this is where IBC comes in. There's an opportunity, and everyone's still exploring what this means for smart cross-chain smart contract calls. So you could have something where an asset moving on a totally public transparent blockchain, like let's say Osmosis or Atom, could trigger the movement of a piece of data or assets privately on Secret Network. So I think we're gonna see some weird models emerge where there's like, these ecosystems straddling each other and having really unique use cases, taking advantage of that. But to keep it simple, on average, when you move your asset off Secret Network, you lose your privacy. So
awesome. So you mentioned that for the entry minting for Secret, it is going to be staked, and it will belong to the treasury. Are you guys building out the ability for the DAO treasury to vote on Secret Network proposals?
So that's something we're kind of trusting the validator set that it gets distributed to vote for the treasury. It feels really weird that an application DAO would be playing a role in governance on Secret Network. Maybe if there was enough secret one day, that would make sense, but out of the gates, that's not like the intended role. The goal is for the DAO to help secure the underlying layer one, fairly and evenly distributed out to a validator set, which then votes on proposals. And then that secret generated from being staked on the Shade DAO will get redirected to the treasury and or to Shade stakers, depending on what governance wants to do with that revenue stream.
Fair enough. Just want to see if I can use DAOception.
DAOception, yeah.
All right. So the airdrop's gonna be on the 21st. And it's going to be on the same place that I showed the calculator, right? Airdrop.shadeprotocol.io. Let me share that one more time real quick. And we're going to come here, and at that time, we'll be able to click the claim, which has the coming soon TM. And am I allowed to share a little bit of this?
Yes,
cool.
Go for it. Yes.
So a little sneak peek you sent me before the episode of the upcoming article. Oh, zoomed in a bit too far. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So I know I'm qualified for the Shade airdrop, and we'll have to connect our Kepler wallet and make sure we have gas. And you guys are using permits, correct?
Yes, there's a mix of permits and viewing keys. Viewing keys just for your general SNP 20, being able to view your Shade balance. Permits are used to verify you own the addresses you say you do across Luna, Atom, and Secret. And that's all done automatically for you. You just have to, at the end of the day, click a button that generates the permit. That's like, yep, this is a cryptographic proof that Eric owns this Luna address, this Atom address, and the Secret address. Right?
Awesome. And you guys already have videos made to help out. It says 90-second of a tutorial.
Yeah, so we have a Shade Protocol's first official branding video that's it's gonna be a 5-minute video that's what's Shade Protocol, and we're gonna have users watch the first 90 seconds, and then they can exit out of the airdrop if they want. We have it rickrolled as the video right now.
Yes.
The official one in there yet.
With no ads though.
Process 4-7.
I appreciate that. I have been rickrolled by Carter on my own show.
A year and a half marketing Shade Protocol just so we could rickroll everyone. That is the only purpose of is that rickroll video.
Love to see it. You want to explain the difference between a permit and a viewing key, which most users, I assume, of Secret Network are familiar with.
Yeah, so it's a great question. A permit is something that is free. Like the viewing keys are something that are generated to view your shade balance, and they cost gas to generate. But then once you generate, you don't have to like regenerate it. But we found that with user experience, there's scenarios where viewing keys are kind of painful. Permits are something that Secret Labs came up with, and it's a way to provably, check a balance or hand off ownership of your balance to be able to view it to a different entity or to a different smart contract without actually having to spend gas on it. The downside of permits is they stress the validator set. There's like how they're queried puts additional strain to certain parts of the collective infrastructure. But they essentially accomplish similar concepts, which is proof of ownership, such that I can now view my encrypted balance or allow someone else to view the encrypted balance. Shade protocol is slightly unique because we also use permits to prove ownership of multiple addresses across multiple chains. So,
love it. And how quickly do you send that information to the IRS?
Let me just fade off this.
All right, I've got a good question here from Improv Fun asking, so she's staking on Cosmos Station. Will she have to migrate to Kepler to claim the airdrop?
Yeah, so you're going to need Kepler. Yeah, Kepler is a requirement to claim the Shade Protocol airdrop. So Kepler's super easy to install. We have a tutorial on how to like set up your Kepler wallet too. So apologies on that front. Couldn't have the claim process be directly integrated to all the wallets, but yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I am super excited for the 21st to claim my airdrop. Is there anything else you want to touch base on for Shade to get people excited? I know everyone's obviously ready. Dude, you guys built this out fast too.
I mean, it's
that good. Good job.
I would just tell, like I always like to be transparent. It's like the biggest things after the airdrop is we're working on the treasury contract, governance contract, staking contract. Like everything's making really, really good progress. There is going to be an extended, probably multi-month audit process, to be honest, as well as public test net where people are incentivized to try to break everything. So I would just say like thank you to the community for their patience thus far, and like there'll have to be more patience required too before we get Silk fully out to the world. Really enjoyed the journey. Community's phenomenal. Thank you, Eric, for having me on the show. Be sure to follow these guys on Twitter. Be sure to hit that subscribe button because they're always pushing out great content for the community. So,
thank you so much. And if you guys are ready to read more of this article that I've kind of teased a little bit with not the best graphics here for some reason, check out Shade Protocol on Medium, where this is going to be launching pretty soon. I'm here from the Secret Swap account following you, so But yeah, guys, awesome work. Can you provide links or anything for you guys' Telegram, Discord, everything? You guys built up a community of over 7,000 people, no bots, super organic, really fast. So
yeah, we kind of got like with some of the. Let me link. How do I link here? I don't know how to. Let me link you on Telegram then. I'll just link you to Twitter. Twitter's good. Twitter's good. We got the special link on there on Twitter that lets you see. It's called Linktree, so you can see nice. Our website link, our blog link, Discord link, Reddit link. So I'll link you that.
Also, it's right here in the comments. Say that again.
Oh, I was gonna say my laptop's about to run out of battery, so if I magically disappear, it's not because I'm trying to rug you. My laptop rugged me.
That was the best of us. So about the giveaway, hit Carter up. Both he and I are going to give away 3 of his books. But I'm going to include some Secret Code podcast koozies because I had 100 made because I thought it was dope. So if you guys like this episode and we're engaged, which we definitely appreciate, tweet us back on the Twitter announcement of this episode. Comment in there and let us know. We're going to choose 6 winners. And you have to be comfortable giving us your address. So if you don't want to dox yourself, we get it. But if you also just want to comment and give some random person's address, then we will send a randand person a copy of Carter's Building Confidence in Blockchain, which I think would be hilarious, and a Secret Code podcast koozie. So maybe that's the way of outreach, you know?
This is how
new
we
crypto evangelism.
So to the boomers, we just start shipping out books to them, right?
I'm just going to highlight random stuff in it, too. It's going to be great. But really, it is an awesome read. I talked about it last time on the show. I'm not giving away my personal copy of this book, but I bought a bunch more because I had some family members and friends that wanted it. It's a great read. It is the best, honestly, Carter, it was fantastic. It is the best, easy to read and understand version of blockchain where people who are maybe somewhat are familiar with or aren't at all can get familiar. And if you are a crypto expert and have been here for years, you're still going to learn a lot. It's really, really well written for that. So check it out, guys. Hit us up on Twitter at Secret Code Pod, and make sure you're following Shade, which you guys are.
And remember, guys, we're all going to make it.
We're all going to make it. Let's go. Thank you, Carter. You rock, bro.
Have a good one, guys.